You should totally watch The Sea Beast if you haven't yet. I'll wait. Okay, now you can't blame me if you get spoilers because I did tell you to watch it, so if you didn't, that's your bad. The Sea Beast is a recently released 3D animated film from Netflix Animation and Sony Pictures Imageworks, and it was directed by Chris Williams. Last time I checked, it had 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was #2 on the Netflix charts, which is... that's pretty damn good. It's a family-friendly 3D animated film about these monster hunters who sail around tracking down and killing these vicious sea beasts that attack innocent ships at sea, supposedly. We follow the most famous monster hunting crew, the crew on the Inevitable, that's the name of the ship, as they bravely battle one of these beasts and then return to collect their payment from the king and queen. But they're told that they're going to be replaced by a naval vessel because they failed to catch the greatest, most dangerous sea beast, who the captain already has it in for because he lost his eye battling her before, back in the day, so they have a history. That's the Red Bluster, that's his arch nemesis. Along the way we also meet Maisie, who's our plucky heroine. Very passionate about becoming one of the monster hunters. Her parents died on a ship as monster hunters, and she wants to be a hero like them, emptying the seas of these vicious beasts. But there's a twist. Okay, it's not much of a twist, it's actually super predictable, but it's a twist, and it's there nonetheless. Can you guess? Can you guess what it is? The monsters are not evil. They're just trying to live their lives, and as per usual, humanity has to come along and mess everything up for everybody else. But actually, it's not just humans, it's the government. The government are lying liars, and they're just trying to cause opposition and make these two groups fight against each other. As always, it seems that that's what the government does best. But Maisie, our heroine Maisie, she sees through this. She recognizes that actually the sea beasts are not evil. There are very strong Moby Dick and How to Train Your Dragon vibes in this movie, but it is a little different from How to Train Your Dragon. Because even though the Red Bluster looks kind of like a huge sea version of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, she's not this benign, playful creature that you can like make your pet or become besties with. She's still a dangerous, wild creature. She has killed people. She's also filled with rage and wants vengeance for the harm done to her species, as much as the humans, and particularly Captain Crow, are filled with rage and vengeance towards the sea beasts. But it's all because of the government and their propaganda, and basically it's about not just blindly trusting what the people above you are telling you, and also a very strong theme during the movie throughout is that you can be a hero and still be wrong. The visuals and art direction really take it to the next level though. It's pretty standout how the character designs are so realistic in their details, yet still retain some cartoonishness in their proportions, but only slightly. It's nothing too ridiculous or out there, you know? It was impressive how successful the animators were in communicating through Red with limited facial movement and no dialogue. She was quite reserved in the flexibility of her facials, but there was a lot communicated with her eyes and body language and really subtle nuances in her brows, eyelids, and mouth. The character designs are also incredible, and each character has so much minute detail and care put into every aspect of the design. If you look at the characters' outfits, the cloth and leather, the details like stitching and buckles, the sharp realistic folds in the clothes, they carry a lot more realism and a higher level of detail than what we used to, especially in children's or family animated content. The shape language as well is distinctive and varied and unique for each character. They each have very distinguishing silhouettes, and the shapes are a lot sharper and closer to real proportions than what is also typical for kids' 3D animated movies and series. Obviously, they're not completely realistic. Some proportions and shapes are exaggerated, so we don't stray into the uncanny valley, but we don't usually have that level of, say, wrinkles on older characters' faces, unless they're meant to be like elderly, or stubble, or the scratches and scars on Red. Design-wise, it was interesting to note that Red is designed in a way to be more appealing to us as the viewers, as she looks a bit mammalian, you know, she's not covered in scales, she doesn't have tentacles or pincers or anything too alien or too far removed from a mammal, because instinctively, humans can empathize more and relate more to a mammal than something that's a little more removed, a bit more foreign to us, like a cephalopod or a crab-like creature. So the scarier or antagonistic sea beasts are the more alien ones, like the crab dude, while Red is designed to be more relatable for us. If you look at the color palettes for the different environments, you'll notice that when we're out in nature on the island or in the sea with Red, it's a lot more vivid and colorful, bright and welcoming, but when we go into the city and around the humans and man-made buildings, it's desaturated, more dull and sterile. You definitely feel like the humans are actually the ones in the wrong here, just from the colors used for these different environments. So let's do a little bit of an animation breakdown of one of the scenes. I like this one where Maisie and Jacob were in Red's nose, and then she sneezes them out and a bunch of chaos ensues. So we have a moment of anticipation here as Red pulls back and straightens up as her nose tickles, and she prepares to sneeze. You've got nice little details here that really sell that feeling of when you're about to sneeze, like her eyes rolling up, her mouth opening and closing a bit and sort of grimacing. And then that contrast just as the sneeze starts of her eyes opening wider before they squeeze shut on the force of the sneeze. You see how she pulls up with anticipation, and then this arc as she comes down and forward as she sneezes, and that force of the sneeze straightens her line of action here. This shot also has good staging, showing the scale of red compared to these really tall palm trees, and we've got the foreground, mid and background elements, and a really nice sense of perspective. And we get the force of that sneeze as it blows the palm tree, and the camera moves in the same direction as well, to the left. And in the next shot, a similar camera move with a matching momentum so that the cuts feel like they flow into one another. And Jacob shoots out of the nostril, and Maisie grabs onto the spear that gets lodged in the opening. It's obviously a really forceful sneeze. We saw that with how the tree was bending and Jacob shoots out so fast coming out of the foreground. And when Maisie grabs the stick with all her limbs, her momentum propels her so she swings around the spear before easing to a stop. And she doesn't just stop dead. We have some overshoot and follow through on her there, and she dips her head down to try hold on tighter. It's really cool framing here as well, as we see the two of them shooting forward. And even though it's such a small cramped space, you would think any action would get muddied or difficult to read. But Jacob shoots out first, and he's got a really clear silhouette, especially with how bright the daylight is behind him. And the same with Maisie as she shoots forward. So you can see here how important staging and framing and clear silhouettes are to have a legible shot. There's also the nice detail of those moisture droplets shooting past them as well, to give that feeling of speed and force of motion. In the next few shots we have Jacob falling down. He's still attached to the rope that's attached to the spear lodged in Red's nostril, so he doesn't just fall straight down and hit the ground. He reaches the end of the rope and starts to swing in a really big arc. The first shot is from a really high angle shot, similar to what Red's point of view would be, so we can see how tiny Jacob is to her, again accentuating the differences in scale between the characters. Then the arc starts as he swings at the end of the rope, and it starts higher than the drop because it's at the top of the arc. But then, as is the nature of arcs, there's the curve downwards, and unfortunately for him, and for some comedic relief, this is close to the ground and he gets dragged in the sand. And you see the moment he realizes that he's going to hit it. And we have that anticipation as his mouth widens and he crosses his arms over his face to protect himself before he hits the sand. But of course that doesn't do much to save him. And he ends up going head over heels, and his arms uncross and kind of starfish with that centrifugal force as he spins. His legs get flung out too, and there are a bunch of nice arcs as he keeps spinning and trying to stop himself somehow. And this is really well done, this sequence. The timing would be really hard to get right, as well as the impact with every bump and then being thrown up into the air. And there are the details like at one point, the rope gets wrapped around his leg and disrupts that quite nice momentum of spinning that he had going on, and he gets jerked into the air by his leg and then falls flat again. It's easy to forget that a human had to sit and animate every little second of this, every movement and motion, because it's so well done. It just feels so natural. I felt bad for him because that would just be the worst. If you've ever been dunked by a wave and tumbled along the bottom of the seabed for what feels like an hour while sand gets into every crevice, you'll have some idea of how terrible this would be. At least it's very pretty pink sand though. And we've got this physical comedy element with his silly posture, butt in the air as he frantically tries to hold on to the sand to stop himself. He hits pretty hard into Red's body, and we get a break from the hectic action and motion of before, and you see he holds on for a few frames there after hitting, before he starts to slide down, but then he grabs hold. We get a closer shot now to see his expression and determination as he thinks now he finally has a chance to hurt Red and save Maisie. He brings his arm back in anticipation and to build that force to bring it forward. And you see how everything is connected here, nothing moves in isolation. We've got the shoulders rotating and even movement in his hips as he pushes up with his legs and his feet as well to build that momentum. And we've got a really strong silhouette here, framed against the brightness of the ocean. Then as his arm comes forward, there's a counter motion and a counter arc as the rope pulls him backwards just as his arm arcs forwards. Another arc as the rope swings him out but then pulls him up. And that momentum and force brings him right up to Red's eye level, and we see again this massive difference in scale between the two of them. He hangs in the air for a moment as Red looks at him, and I feel like there's a little bit of disdain for him in her passive expression and the way her eyes follow him down as he drops out of frame. And he also lost his grip on his dagger that he was about to stab her with. And the timing of that flipping in the air and following him a few frames later is another nice comedic touch. He falls with an impact into the sand, which is enhanced by how quick and sudden his slamming into the ground was. And you see how deep that indentation is that his body made in the sand and all the sand that settled on top of him. You know somebody is winded when they land like a starfish. We cut to a close-up of his face to see the pain and regret, and then he opens his eyes. And in the next shot, which is from his point of view, we see his dagger hurtling towards him. So it was nice how in the previous shot they'd had the timing offset when he fell down and his dagger fell down. So we could already see that sort of foreshadowing of his dagger, you know, when he dropped it and it spun in the air and it fell down a few seconds after him. So we see his dagger hurtling towards him, which feels like he's gonna get what he deserves for trying to stab Red. And looking at this, it feels like maybe her expression before was also a little bit smug as she foresaw what was gonna happen. In the next shot, we're back to the close-up of his face, and the very surprised and worried expression as he sees what's about to happen and realizes he better move quick. He starts to sit up. We've got some motion blur there because it's so fast. And in the next shot, which is a wider shot, that motion of sitting up continues as he gets out the way just in time as the dagger hits the ground right where his head was. Then the rope starts pulling him again. You see all that length of rope that had curled up on him starts to pull tight, and he just has the time to grab the dagger again before being pulled away in a very undignified way, being led again by his butt with that drag on his hands and legs. There's more of that kind of action, but I want to skip forward to these parts where we get some communication with Red. You'll see that her facial expressions are very subtle but still very expressive. I really like this part where we have the two of them in frame here in this wide shot, with him in the tree as she slowly comes into the frame. I feel like she's got a bit of a cheeky expression on her face, sort of smug and smirking in a way, but nothing too extreme. The way her mouth is slightly ajar and her teeth are showing, it's sort of goofy, but she's also curious. Then when she's examining the rope that's coming out of her nose, she lifts her fin up to see the rope better, bring it close to her face, which is a very human gesture. Her mouth starts out slightly open but closes as she concentrates on the rope. And take note of the staging and silhouette here. If the camera had been straight on and not at this angle, her silhouette would have been muddied and too symmetrical because she has a really simple silhouette. There's not much difference between her head and her neck, so it wouldn't have read as well as it does from this angle, where we get to see that negative space between her fin and her face and her neck, and that differentiation between her neck and head, and a bit more interest with being able to see those ridges in her face. In the side shot, as she further examines the rope and tries to figure out where it's leading to, her eyes narrow and we see her cheek move up and a slight tensing in her mouth as she figures out where the rope leads and she pulls on it. And then when Maisie shoots out and then swings back, and we get this cool shot from her point of view, and she swings back towards Red and Red's huge mouth. We cut to this wide shot and we see as the swinging slows down as it eases out of that action, and she stops herself with her foot on Red's lip, then starts to swing back, but then Red starts to open her mouth in anticipation, and she darts forward. And we don't know for a second if she's going to try eat her. And then she catches her boot in her mouth to stop her, and we realize she just wanted a better look at her. I like how as Red's breath hits Maisie, Maisie flinches. She's not quite sure yet of what's going on either. And you've got her bag dangling under her, still with some follow through on it. And we have this view of Red from Maisie's point of view, and we get to see these nice details of her nostrils moving as she breathes, the pupils constricting and dilating as she focuses on Maisie, and those subtle movements in the eyelids. It's those little nuances, those details that you don't notice at first, that really bring the character to life and make her relatable. I like how in the end they don't just become happy clappy friends with the sea beasts. They don't just, you know, start giving them to their kids or using them as cheap labor or transport in the seas or whatever. There's still these, you know, very separate wild animals. They just learn to leave them alone. I think it's a great message for kids to learn that you can be a hero and you can still be wrong. You can think you're doing the right thing and it might not necessarily be the right thing, especially if you're causing harm to others. And it's also good to learn that wild animals are not always going to be your friend. You don't need to go into their territory because they're dangerous animals and kill them. Just stay away from them. Leave them alone. Let them live their lives. We don't have to take over every single little part of the globe, you know? Let the animals have their place. The visuals and character designs, the details in the costumes and in the sets and environments really drew you into the story and made it all that more believable. And the water simulation was just incredible. It looked more like real water than real water does. You also really got a really great sense of scale, the insignificance of the humans in comparison to, you know, the massiveness of the sea beasts as well as the sea in general. The humans are so tiny in this deep, deep water and this wide open ocean. It's not really a place that they're meant to be. It was super impactful. I do feel like the red bluster, which was the main sea beast, could have had a little more to her character design. She felt a little empty and bare, especially compared to the other sea beasts, which were a lot more interesting to look at and just a little bit more appealing in my opinion. I know they obviously didn't want to make her feel too intimidating or scary, especially for kids, but I feel like they were being a little bit too careful with her and they could have given her a bit more A bit more to her design, a bit more detail, a bit more to make her feel more unique and interesting to look at. I really also love the diversity and representation that they brought in here. Our heroine Maisie was a person of color, so was the totally kick-ass Sarah Sharp, and they were two of the best characters if you ask me. Representation matters, especially in children's content, but you know, in all content, and I'm so glad that we are finally getting that diversity in a lot more of our films. So that about wraps it up. Let me know if you've seen the film, what you enjoyed the most about it, and what issues you might have had with it, because you know, there were maybe some plot holes and stuff like that that people picked up on, so let me know what you thought about it. Thank you as always to my beautiful shining patrons. I appreciate the support so much. Hit the like button if you liked the video, subscribe if you want to keep up to date with my other animation reviews, and if you want to learn a little bit more about animation and motion graphics. Bye!